Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero. We are in the majestic mountains, so to say, to go over and bring you majestic content. So today's guest is going to be Justin Boyum. And if I hacked his name, he's going to tell me when we go live. He is a man that has served in the Army, leading teams, and now leading you to success. So we're going to bring him onto the stage. You already know our tagline, so we're just going to go right into the man, the myth, and the legend because the content for me is worthless without the guest. So we're going to bring Jay to the stage. Jay, thanks for coming on the stage.
Hey, thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it. Yes, and no, my name is confuses some people, even though it's a short name. It is Boyum. So it's
Boyum.
exactly how it's spelled. It's like boy, but it's okay. It comes from Norway, even though I'm American, so I get it.
Totally understand. I've been hacking last names since 18. So we'll
All
work on
good.
that each and
I think we share that superpower. So
Cool. Awesome. So let's get into how you got your superpowers and what inspired you to join the military many moons ago.
Well, I can tell you this. It's I first before I kind of hop into that, if I can just say, like, it's super exciting to be on your channel, and I really appreciate and honor you for what you're doing to serve the community. To answer your question, though, what inspired me to join the military? It's not going to be some earth-shattering thing. I joined the military back in 2008, and it came on the heels of going to college, and I needed to find a way to pay for college, and so there was an ROTC scholarship opportunity when I was going to school, and I had to find a way to pay for it, and that was the way. And so it got me into the military. So I was not somebody who was raised. I've always had respect for the military. My dad was in the Army. Both my grandfathers were in the service. It was always an option, but it's never something that I was super passionate about. But I'm very, very thankful that I did find my way into that program and get into the military because it as most people know, it kind of forces you to grow up and really become yourself. And I never grew more than when I was in the military. It definitely put me into spaces where I had to become more of who I am today. And I'm so thankful that I had that experience. Not that it didn't come with its challenges. Everybody knows the military is its own kind of thing, and it can certainly chew you up. But I'm glad that I was in it. And so that's what inspired me to join it. But I love being part of that very limited and niche community.
You joined for a lot more honorable than me. If you ever heard my story on other interviews, it was because of a girl. So I didn't even sign up even to pay off debt. So more honoring than myself. I mean, it has changed in 24 years drastically, but initially it was because of a girl. We'll share that another time. So you got inspired by going over and at least going over and paying college debt and everything else. So
Yeah,
we're going to go down to the next
I
part
just did it
because
on the front end instead of after the fact. So
yeah. So that's a nice part. Yeah, I went to college too, but yeah, we'll get into that another time. So, backstory of becoming a veteran. So 2008 until when, and what made you make that transformation to veteran?
Yeah, so oddly enough, so I stayed active duty for 5 years, but when I graduated from school, I don't know if you know anything about how the ROTC to like into the officer corps works, but there's a training program that you have to like get rated, and it's usually in the summertime. And you usually do that a year before you would actually be going active duty. But I got injured, and so I couldn't participate. So I actually went after I graduated, and that particular year, at least this is what I'm told, that they were funneling a lot of people towards National Guard and reserves, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to go to full active duty service. So I was in the Texas National Guard, and then I received an opportunity. They did like active duty operational support. If for those who haven't heard of it, basically it just made me a guard soldier, but on active duty, and they just attached me to First Infantry Division in Fort Riley. And so I was just there. I was there for it was supposed to be there for 3 years. I got them to extend it for a couple more, but my extension orders didn't come until like a week before I was supposed to like ETS, from active duty. And so I had already gone through like an express version of trying to transition out of active duty like a year before I actually did it. So I was like, oh, I almost had like no job. And so my transition, then when I actually did it, I was much more prepared because I was like, I don't want that to happen again. So I got to spend my final year while I was still doing my job, really thinking through what I was going to do after the fact, after not being on active duty. We had made that decision that we weren't going to stay and try to force into a full-time career with it, because my wife and I were still young and we want to have a family. I didn't want to be deploying back and forth. So it was like, well, we'll just go ahead and transition. That was never my lifelong dream to be a, like a general or anything like that. As much as I value my experience. However, as I think many veterans experience, the transition was like, I was kind of just kind of going through the motions. You don't know what you don't know when you're coming out of it. And so I just was like, well, I was trained in logistics, and, I'm good at that. I'm good at being a leader. So I'll just go into logistics in the corporate world. And as you've probably seen, and other people talk about their transition, it wasn't exactly the same thing as when you were doing it in the military. Am I right there, Daniel? Is that what other people tell you?
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. It's never sunshine and rainbows. You meet very few people in their transition that actually match. They say, "This is what I wanted to do." I met people that had six figures saved getting out, and then years later, where they wanted to be. It reminds me of like when my kids are teens right now, and they're saying like, I'm going to be this. Like one of my kids are like, I'm going to be in carpentry. I said, I bet you in 30 years, you will not be in carpentry for 30 years. I put $100,000 wager. So now I'm recorded publicly around the world saying this, that if my daughter's 45 and I'm 73, I'm still alive. My first daughter will get $100,000. I'd be very impressed if she did 30 years straight of being in carpentry starting at 15 years old. So yeah, I have not
It's
seen
almost
many
like a
people.
rule in four-year universities. If you go to a university, you're not allowed to declare a major for the first 2 years or something like that, um, until you figure it out. Because I think most people end up changing anyway. Same thing for coming out. Like, it wasn't very hard. I had a lot of support. I'd done the things about putting together a resume, thinking through what I could go do, just leaning on my experience. Didn't have really that hard a time finding a gig. Um, but when I got there, it just wasn't. There was something missing. Uh, the values were different. What the motivations were for the organization, and I don't want to. I'm not speaking ill will of the opportunity. It just wasn't aligned with who I was, so I wasn't very happy. And as most people do, when it's not working out, you go try to find something that will be. And so I was bouncing around corporate America for 3 4 years trying to figure it out, and suddenly kind of figured out that, oh, you know what the problem is that I haven't done the inner work. I haven't figured out what's really meaningful to me. So this is a problem that's going to keep following me until I go figure it out. So I actually removed myself from corporate America and started working like as an operations manager for small businesses here in Austin, Texas, where I'm from. And the rest, they say, is rock and roll history. We can kind of get to the pivot point if you want. But my transition was good, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say necessarily smooth.
Yeah, and that again, I would love to have more people to have their transformation to go over and be smooth and everything else. But I think sometimes that adversity goes over and shapes us to go
Mhm.
figure out. Because I was really intrigued when I found you online and everything else and reading what you go over and do. I'm like, first off, I'm like, we need to have an after conversation because that's probably some of the things I want to do. And secondarily, it's like that's real interesting that you went from logistics to helping people with success. So let's jump into that right now about what made you pivot because
Well,
I thought that was a very impressive stats and things to go over and do. So, and you can tell them more about it and what you do in transformation.
right. So what pivoted me out of corporate America was that I got an opportunity to go to like a 4 day intensive workshop, like a live seminar, that was all around like high performance and things like that, like how to be your best self and leader and productivity and all that. And I'm sitting there, and it's kind of a weird experience. People are bouncing around up and down. They're all into it. It's kind of not my style. I'm a little bit more stoic in nature. I'm trying to now I have kids of my own, so I'm trying to open up and allow myself to be a little more silly. But at the time, I was like, this is weird. But everything they're saying made total sense. And I'm sitting there going, like, everybody's talking, like, hearing this, like, hey, you should get up at the same time every day, and you should be organized, and you should, plan things. I'm going like, I learned that in the military. This isn't rocket science. It's all stuff that I know. And I was starting to realize that not everybody got the discipline that we get in the military, right? That organization and structure that's instilled into us. So I'm like, you know what? I could do some of that. And there was an opportunity to learn, like, hey, how could you be a professional coach? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I loved about being an officer in the military, was that helping the people, helping. I loved my enlisted corps probably more than the officer corps. I loved interacting with that community and helping people really get promoted and, be their best selves and take their careers to the next step. And I was like, this just makes total sense. And so I was like, I'm going to go do this. I don't care what I've been doing. All this other experience doesn't matter to me. This is what I'm going to go do. And I wanted to help military veterans transition out of the military better than I could, because it took me 4 or 5 years to get that epiphany. I was like, that shouldn't take you 4 or 5 years. You should be able to know that coming out. And so I was like, I'm going to get into coaching and work with the military community. And I'm going to kind of sidestep that. I just want to talk about the idea of launching like your own business. And what I was going through was creating that experience for that community was different than I thought it would be. But anybody who's like been into coaching or consulting, that you have to be able to provide the service that the target avatar really wants. And that's where I started to struggle in business. I was like, I can't get this in front. I would put this in front of everyone would say it's awesome, but then nobody would want to sign up for it for whatever reason. And I started to realize that, to your point, the transitioning community, you don't know what you don't know. So you won't necessarily invest in things. And it's almost like you have to go through that adversity of doing the transition and figuring out what you like or don't like before you're really ready for the next steps. And so I still had some success in growing that business, but it was a lot of an uphill battle. It felt like I would have, big months where I was doing lots of revenue and lots of activity. And then I'd have 2 or 3 months where it was really slow. It was just up and down roller coaster, and I would pivot. I would try new things. I don't know if that's ever happened or if you've ever heard anybody, Daniel, if that's seen anybody who's watching this. It's like,
I am your target avatar. You're speaking that now.
what's going on? Why can't I get this up? Like, why is it so up and down? Like, I couldn't figure it out. And I think in many ways, we just tend to overcomplicate things. It's like we have such a heart for it. And it makes total sense for us. But the people who aren't us, who aren't in our tunnel vision, they don't see it the same way. And there's this way that we have to respond to it. But I want to kind of pivot back to what I really learned. What it took me years to figure this out. And I spent lots of money trying to learn this, probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to learn this lesson, is that it has to be simple. And the best way that I know how to describe it is like the epiphany that happened for me is like in FM 7-8, the rifle and infantry platoon tactics, right? It's like a hasty ambush, right? It's, you have to get people in a certain place, and you have to have this experience where where what's going to happen. And and anybody who's, whether you're veteran or not, that there's certain metrics that have to be before you can actually run that operation. And I'll kind of describe it in a second. But you can know that there's success, and it has to be simple. But the point is that it has to there's a certain event that has to happen in order for you to be successful. What made me have the epiphany and what made me launch my business was an event. What most people's, their life and their philosophy and their point of view happens through events. Like going to church every week is an event. It's an experience that you have that shapes who you are. Boot camp is an event. Going through a deployment is an event. Those are the things that actually transform us. And so I sit there going, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe this is what I should have been doing the whole time. And I didn't learn it until 2020. So it's like 7 years after I transitioned. I didn't learn it until 2020 when COVID happened, because I could no longer physically go places to talk to people. I was like going, okay, how can I have these experiences where instead of networking to get what I want, how could I help people get that transformation? And I learned all about doing online virtual events. Like instead of having to book a hotel and get everybody there and have food and coffee, I could actually create that experience online, and then everybody could experience the transformation. And then the next logical step was, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about, and I love his point of view. I love his perspective, his philosophy. Let's sign up this. I want to go this way. This is the path I want to go. And now people are asking to work within my programs, instead of me having to go out and say, hey, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Right. That's that was the thing that just kind of changed it. And it was all through events. That's the way through it.
Yeah, I've taken way longer to figure that out. I just figured it out about a couple months ago. So you're further ahead in the game of me, because I got out of active duty in 2012. I'm still a reservist, but I just learned that a few months ago, that if you want to connect communities, you go through one experience at a time. And it's those experiences that go over and bond us. And when they have a great experience and they want to follow us and they want to work with us. So wish I would have known you 4 years ago. A lot more headaches I would have avoided. It's like
Well,
I'm your target avatar. You're just hitting me right there. You're like,
well, listen, Apple, like I'll go big picture and then we can kind of small scale just because some people might be intimidated by what I'm talking about. But like a company like Apple, right, or a Fortune 100, like all these big tech companies, did you know like a big portion of what they make on their earnings every year happens through their expos, like their big giant like tech events that they do once a year? It's like half their income. And the reason for that is because they bring everybody into the room and the experience is so immersive that everybody goes, I want that.
mm-hmm.
Right. That's why some of the big gurus you've seen, they run on like online or in person multi-day experiences. And the reason they do that, like they'll get stadiums, they'll fill stadiums. And like how much logistics does that cost? Like what's the capital that has to be done? Like in all the moving parts to bring everybody into that room and create that experience. Well, they do that and you at the end of it go, this is so much fun. And it's the immersion that creates the conversion. That's what makes people believe. That's why people who read books, they sit there and they go like, oh, this is amazing. I want the next one. Because they're pre-sold on the next step. Right. Whereas when you come to someone cold and they don't really know about it, it's like, oh, that sounds interesting. They're not really ready because they haven't been immersed in the point of view that you have or more immersed in the philosophy that makes them they really go like, this is the way I need to go. Because there's so many distractions and different ways people can go. That's what happened to me when I was trying to coach with transitioning veterans. They've got this service and that service and this service and this nonprofit and this, like, there's just so many things out there that they don't know which one's necessarily the right way to go. And I can raise my hand. That's where I was at. I don't know if that happened to you, Daniel, but I was like, this makes sense. So the only way to help people is through an event. And now here's the fun part. If you're running a business and this works, whether you're a coach like me or a consultant, or you have an agency service, or you sell products, or whatever you do, like events are the number one monetization strategy you could have. Right. But here's the fun part. Like, let's say you have a high ticket service or a product, right? Something that costs, let's say, $5,000 to $10,000 to do. Most of the time on that one, a lot of people have a channel that's like, hey, let's book a call and have a sales call to sell that product or service. And that's all well and good. And generally in today's day and age, it's run an ad to a page that tells you about it. And then if you're interested, you'll click the button, you'll get on a sales call, and somebody will talk to you about it and they'll try to sell it to you. Right. Yep. And this is like, I'm saying, like a small time business. You could certainly have like a managed service product that's like a $50,000, $100,000 program, right? It doesn't matter. Usually it's going to take at least one call to do that. On the call funnels that people use, even if you're pretty good at sales, like the overall conversion rate of people who actually book that call is maybe around 10% will actually buy the product. Now, most calls are about an hour. So let's just say if I wanted to make one sale every week, I would have to run the ads enough and that, money on the side. Let's say I spent $2,000 in ads to do that. I got 10 calls. Let's just assume everybody shows up, and we know that not everybody shows up to their call, yeah. Right? So you got to chase them down. But let's just assume that they did. That means it's going to take me 10 hours to get one person to sign up for my program. And by the way, even if I spent $2,000 in ads to make a $5,000 sales, it would be worth it. Right. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to knock down the idea of ads, right? This is just saying there's some things involved in that. However, what if instead I took my energy or my ad spend and I said, let me create an experience for everyone. Let me help them immerse. I'm more than likely, because it's not a one-on-one, like, hey, let me learn all about you. And I've got to expose myself to this salesperson I don't know so that I can have this conversation. What if instead of that, I created an experience where they could come in and learn, and they could actually engage with the expert or the person who knows what they're talking about and really find out if this is the right thing for them? One, you're more than likely to get more people to actually show up, for one. And then two, they're only going to come to an event because they're actually interested, meaning you're not going to get tire kickers into that program. The only people who are going to be there are the people who are actually interested in what you have to say. And you engage with them, what I found with the virtual event strategy that we'll talk about, and I can kind of walk through the framework if you want. What we see is that 20% of the people who attend your event or more will enroll in your program. And it's all done in a single day experience, right? Or not even a full day. So just take that instead of 10 hours over the week chasing people down plus the ad spend. What if I just spent a little bit more time with them on one day and I'm going to end up with more clients? Which one would you rather do? I'd go the event strategy. And the reason
Yeah.
is it's that immersion that creates the conversion. And it's fun. That's the other part of it. It's way more fun than doing individual sales calls. I don't know about you. I don't love being on sales calls all the time. Right.
Yep.
So,
Yep, I totally get that. I mean, I do love the sales call in a sense, but the sad part about that conversion, and I remember even some of the, I remember this, I learned about this briefly. I'm not sure if you went to the Ultimate Speakers Conference. They travel across the nation. They do these big conferences
I know
in
what it is,
person.
but I've never been to it.
I've been to it, so I'll share my experience. So I signed up. It was free. And I started to do some like homework with it. So I started talking to the people afterwards, and they said, like, yeah, we usually get a 30% sales closure. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow. I'm like, because usually it's 10% is good, 20% is like, wow, 30% is like, what did you do? And I want to replicate that. But they would have 900 people sign up, book a room for 150. 750 of those people were tire kickers, as you were talking about. 150 were at the beginning of the day. There was only 50 people left at the end of the day because you have the I'd say the more, not tire kickers, maybe tire checkers. I don't know. We're just trying to keep the same analogy. And then there's only 50 of us left. They still sold at 30%. And they said even that 30% is super successful because their program was like $10,000. So if you even
Yeah.
had 15 people sign up, you're having $150,000 and you rented the venue for maybe a couple thousand. So they got 15 people in
It
at
certainly
that point.
depends on the venue. But I love that you brought that up. Let's say you had a program. And by the way, if you don't have a program, like it's like offers are created all the time. It's not as hard as you think to create an offer that's valued at 5, 10, 15, $20,000. Right. It's absolutely possible to do. But let's just say you go with a standard consulting or coaching offer and it was $10,000. Well, what we do, we call it the epic event strategy because it's designed specifically to help you create a 6 or 7 figure day. But let's just keep with the 6 figure day because most people even think that's kind of impossible. Even with a 20% close rate, which by the way would probably just be at your first event because after you optimize it, you're gonna have that experience, that 30% or better, right? But that means in order to create $100,000 in revenue, if we just do the math at 20%, that means if you can find 50 people who are interested in your subject or getting the result that your product or service provides, and you can get them in that room, you will have 10 people sign up for your program if you do it the right way. So,
Mhm,
okay, if I want 10 clients, then I need to have 50 people attend my room. Remember, instead of 50 sales calls,
mhm.
right? We're doing all of them at one time. So now we're scaling. It's not costing us any more time to do this. Let's say you had 100 people there. Now it's a $200,000 day, right? And we can go on and on and on from there, right? So that's the fun part. And by the way, I didn't have to rent no venue.
Yeah, that
I didn't
is a
have
great
to
part.
get food and coffee for everybody. Now,
Yeah.
what's the challenge? You have to maintain engagement,
Mhm,
right? If they're doing a virtual experience, they're probably in their home office, just like you and I are right now. What do they
mhm.
have? Kids in the background. They have their email right here. You know what I mean? You know, a different screen. They've got their phones, right? They're not elbow to elbow, right? Again, that's why the bigwigs of the world still do live, in person, full, like 12-hour day experiences in a room because you don't have anywhere else to go and they know, and that's if you've ever been to an event like that, they'll make offers to you, and it's totally not pressure. You don't have to make an offer. They usually make special event rate things, but you'll see people run to the back of the room. It's called a table rush,
Yep.
right? To go get involved in that. Like, and what you can do is you can create that table rush, but you can do it virtually. That's the fun part. That's what I like. And I love that. Like, let's keep it simple. That's what got me into this plane is like, how could I just, what's the straight line? Well, if the fastest path to create a profitable business is with a high ticket program or offer, and then the fastest and most efficient way to sell an offer is through an event, then I pair the two together and we create that kind of hasty ambush, but we do it in a virtual experience to will help people and really serve the people who want to be served. And then make an invitation to them and they go, yeah, I want more. I'm ready for the next step for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's the type of thing I know a lot of veterans in my community know. I have like probably about 150 referrals going through my head, including myself. I need to refer myself to this program, you know. So, because we all have done it as veterans and military, we eventually go over and we find a pain point like in there, and you found your pain point to go over and to work through. And you're like, hey, I want to be logistics, but then I'm like, no, that's not what I want to be when I grow up. I really just want to be successful and help people being successful. And you took what you were doing in the Army and transform that. But a lot of my veterans are like out there grinding out content, grinding out products. I have a few books. My wife has a few books. Veterans I know that have a few books. I know veterans that have millions of downloads of podcasts, but they're still not at the point of doing it full time, including myself. I'll just be transparent. I'm doing it part time. And that would be amazing to go over and say, okay, my ideal clients are out there. And if you're not a salesy person, you just get to go show who you are, make it engaging, keep it virtual if you want to keep it virtual. If you want to spend more money, do it in person. I'm telling you, in person is super expensive. I'll give you an example. I used to travel across the nation speaking and teaching with like companies, and they contracted me out X amount of dollars a day and everything else. The projector broke. $1,500. I had to bring my own. My projector broke. $1,500. Thank the Lord the company paid for it. But initially, like, what happened to your projector? I'm like, it literally frazzled out. So $1,500 had to be dropped for one day. And I didn't make a single sale. Like, even though I am captivating, it's just God's gift. I'm not trying to brag or boast, but I am captivating. But I still did not make a sale because it was a corporate type of event that most of the people got sent to. They weren't the hungry people. The corporations that you need to have this class.
They were the forced fun crowd.
Yeah, the forced fun crowd. So I had to make it fun and keep it engaging. And then with the projector dying and everything else, and this is San Francisco, beautiful city. Wouldn't live there, too expensive, but beautiful city. And then I'm like doing this, and I didn't get a single sale. And they're getting thousands of dollars of offer for hundreds of dollars of cost for an entire year. And I even ran my own events before. And even with the max ticket sales, I got like 11 ticket sales for one event. Ooh, big baller, but I thought it was huge then. And then you do your call to action. They're kind of more of the, hey, I'm going to do the tire kicking thing. So this strategy would only cost you $15 after you have everything set up, because Zoom is $15 a month. So even if you
the logistical costs are, yeah. Do you have a Zoom account? Which if you work with me, you don't have to, because I run the whole thing, right? So you don't even have to have that.
There you go.
But yeah, do you have a phone, or do you have some ability to be on camera on the internet?
Mm-hmm.
That's really the logistics, right? And then, sure, you could, spend money on ads if you want to, but you don't even have to do that. Here's the fun part. Like, when I first did this strategy, I didn't have a huge list or anything. I just said, okay, well, I need to find more of the people. I was running a career coaching style offer at the time. And I said, well, I need to find a way to get people in a room, because I can't go and hobnob with people the same way. And I don't love, operating in the DMs all the time. Right. It wasn't my way back then. So it's like, okay, how can I go get in front of people? Because I don't want to spend money on ads. And I said, well, I know a lot of coaches, because I'm a coach, right? I got certified, so I knew a lot of coaches. So I just started going, okay, who do I know that offers a coaching program that is, like, say, side by side, or is before or after my step in the process, right? I was helping people with, what do you want to do when you grow up? And let's go help you go do that. So I said, okay, who might share that? And I said, well, I know people who help people get in shape, right? That's like they do like health coaching programs for like executive people. I was like, okay, let me go talk to them and say, hey, listen, would some of your clients find value in learning how to do what they really want to do, and not just what they feel like they have to do, right? And they're like, yeah, that'd be great, cool, awesome. And they're like, how do you get in front of your people? It's like, well, I have an email list, and I have an Instagram channel that has a few thousand followers. Like, great, cool. Could I come and provide some free training to you, and then invite them to my event if they want the next steps? And by the way, I'd love to make you an affiliate for that. And they're like, yeah, no problem. And so I just did that multiple times, and we ran an event, and we had let's see, at the very first one, I'll just be modest about it. And we were learning this. I think we had like 86 people registered. But because I went through that process and I was borrowing the expertise and the good faith of the other person at the time, like we had a really good show up rate. And we had like 33 people in the room out of 86. So it wasn't awesome, but for a free thing that we were doing, we had 33 people there, and 86% of the room that came to the event applied to work with us.
Wow, that's
Right.
that's insane numbers. Like that's insane numbers because I've been to all these kind of major big events. Now, I didn't go to the famous firewalker dude, if you know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah.
I'm going to one of his events like virtually the 13th through the 15th because I'm working on like online courses and
Sure.
whatnot. But
And I'm sure it's going to be amazing, by the way. Right. I know we're talking about the same person. Is the best who ever did it. Right. So,
yeah, yeah, I didn't know if you went that. All the time I was thinking about that 4-day life event. I'm like, did you go to the firewalking one? That's what was all in my mind. I'm like, did you
I
walk
did
a
not go
fire?
to the firewalking one, but I've known people who have been to it. But it sounds like a lot. I did not go to that one though.
Yeah, you got to have a lot of money. Those people are dedicated. Like you're saying, you're right. They pay 50. I knew some people like this is how I learned how to publish digital TV, all these things. I know people that paid $15,000 and it's all like, yeah, yeah, rah, rah, and everything else. And like, and us as military, we know this, but we don't know how to take it from information to application. That's the problem.
Mhm.
Is that that's our biggest gap is that we're so used to information and we know how to apply it in one venue, but we really don't know how to apply it in application, which
Yeah,
is
it was
wisdom.
applying it across domains was the challenge, right?
Yeah.
So we knew the stuff, and I just they're going, oh my god. So I was not at that one. It was another kind of bigger name at the time, but yeah, but same basic principle, and they do that because it's the immersion that creates the it's just the fun part. I don't want to keep saying that over and over again, but that's really what it is, and they know that if they can help you come to the decision on your own through the experience, then it's a no-brainer. If you have the ability to invest in yourself, you will do it, because what are you gonna go do? Try to go to multiple different people at that point when you already see the person in front of you can help you. That's
Yeah.
the point of it. And as long as you can actually help someone, then this is the best path. And it's just fun. So just imagine, like, if you just take my story, and I've helped other people do this, you do not need to have a good list. I even helped a friend of mine who had never sold anything high ticket, never had his own program. He was selling, small products as a representative for somebody else, but he wrote a book about how to make money through networking. And I just said, hey, I see you've been promoting your book. You should totally run an event, and you could launch an offer teaching people the stuff that's in your book and helping them implement it. And he's like, no, I don't know about this. And I was like, telling you, you've already been promoting your book. Just go back to those same audiences, tell them you're doing an event. I'll put it on with you. I'll develop all the content. You don't have to worry about it. I'll co-speak with you. I promise you, you're going to do really well. And he went from never selling anything like that to having 50% of his first room sign up to take his brand new, never doesn't even really exist yet coaching program.
Yeah.
Right? He filled up his coaching program from day one by running an event.
No, I agree. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, and nowadays you can not even have things launch and just give people a launch date and then just get that thing done. So you get your people that buy in and you have like the first or second course built, but then you can just build the rest live with the class. So
And
that is,
he got to build it. He built his first cohort and broke all those eggs with a brand new set of people, and he's going to run his next event. And I'm confident he's going to do even bigger
that's really
in his next
awesome.
one.
That's really awesome. So before we get too much in success, I'd like to go over and see how you keep the success going with one of our last couple questions. Is what is your secret fuel when pressure and tough times come? Maybe not right now because you're super successful and helping tons of people and you're like, there's no pressure. I'm just making tons of money. I'm a baller. But when you do have those moments, and we all do, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, how do you go over and keep going, especially when you're helping others to go over and break their pressure in tough times?
Yeah, so I had to learn the hard way. Like, so back when I was launching my first coaching program that I struggled with when I was trying to serve the veteran community, who I think you and I are both passionate about, and I just wasn't quite getting the momentum I want. Like, I just want to help them, but they won't let me help them. And now I'm struggling to, pay all my bills at the same time. I was trying to do this. Um, there's always another path when someone says no. to what you're trying to offer them, right? They're saying no to the offer. They're not saying no to you. You can't, nobody's going to buy something they don't want. And so that's all they're saying to you. And so it's just a small tweak usually of, you can not necessarily have to change the delivery mechanism of what you're trying to provide, whether it's a product or service. It's what's the offer trying to help them to do? What's the reason they're going to be there? And what I go to all the time, one of my favorite films, and the book is excellent as well. Have you ever seen like The Legend of Bagger Vance? It's kind of an old movie now.
No,
It's a
I've
golf
never even
movie.
heard that. It's the first time I've ever heard of that.
Phenomenal film, in my opinion. It was directed by Robert Redford. It's got Will
Okay.
Smith and Matt Damon. Go watch it. It's amazing. But it's about, I'll just pretense for this. It's about a golfer during the Great Depression. So it's between World War I and II. The golfer was from Georgia, and he was like this big, successful guy, but he gets drafted to go to the war, and he suffers from PTSD, and he kind of loses everything. And then the town that he's from, is just crumbling. And there's a golf course that was built ready to be like this pristine golf course, and then it's struggling because of the depression. Nobody can come, right? And so they put on this tournament where they're going to have Bobby Jones and Walter Hagen, who are both famous, Hall of Fame level golfers in real life, come and compete in this exhibition match. But the town won't let them do it unless they have a local representative. So they get the guy who's, played by Matt Damon to come and participate because he was at one time kind of an up and coming golfer. But he's struggling with PTSD the whole time, and he's trying to really find himself again. And the character played by Will Smith, who's the caddy, who's an allegory for God, really is who it's supposed to be. He's trying to help him really discover himself again and understand that he's going to be a new version of himself. He's not going to just suddenly become the old version who was crushing it before. He's going to have to be a new version of that, which is how life works, right? It's just how it is. And there's a quote that happens when they're talking about the two famous golfers. And Bobby Jones is seen as kind of the fundamental. He's doing everything the right way. It's just grace and emotion. He's just doing everything exactly how it's supposed to be. Everything's safe down the fairway, and he's really, really good. And then they talk about the Walter Hagen character, who is portrayed as more of like the flashy guy who's really more Hollywood. And they talk about him like he hit more bad shots in a round than most people. But his philosophy, and this is a real quote, his philosophy was that 3 lousy shots and 1 brilliant shot still make par. So you may be in a moment where you feel like every shot you're taking is lousy and it's just not working. But there's always still a way to hit a brilliant shot. And for me, once I learned that there's a strategy that at any time, if I really wanted to and I really needed to, I could go run an event with an existing or a brand new offer, and I can go generate income. And I can help other people to do that at any time. I can take anybody's program and I can create an event around it and help it scale.
Yeah.
So now I know.
Now I have 250 referrals. I'm just going through my head. I'm like, I have so many people to refer you, and I'm not trying to do anything. I just think of my veterans. I'm like, man, they're just so struggling. And it's like, if you know how to make that brilliant one shot, that brilliant shot you could last a lot of lousy shots after that point.
The moment you do a 6-figure day, you start going, what have I been doing this whole time? Right.
No, if I'm making 6-figure, you know what I'm doing? I'm quitting my military job that day.
The moment you do that, you're like, what have I been doing this whole time? And I tell you, I went through, this is not, I think it definitely can be done. I just told you, I'll give you a couple of examples already of people who we just ran it, even if they didn't have an existing offer. But I've spent years going, what's the right answer? I don't really love webinars, and networking's kind of working, but it's not particularly reliable. Referrals aren't necessarily reliable as a source. You have to have this other way. It's like, what can I I just need something to happen. And and referrals are great. That is a fantastic strategy, but it has to be a systematic strategy.
Of course.
It's like, what can I do? And I'm going to have to go get another job. And if I don't find something to do, and I've been in that moment.
That's a cuss word to me. A job is a cuss word to me.
Well, we all know that job, right, just stands for just over broke, right? We know that, but
it is.
And listen, there's nothing wrong if that's what you need to do to cover the bills for a short term, right? And I get it. But once you know that, hey, I can struggle for a little while. If I can hit the brilliant shot, then it's okay. Right. And I'm not saying go to the lottery, right? That's great if it works, but you're not giving yourself much success there, right?
No,
That's
it's
not
the one
that would be
hundred,
luck, right?
292 million. Yeah, I
Right.
know those
That
odds.
that would just be luck, right? But you can hit a brilliant shot. You can be an overnight success, and you can do it. And maybe nobody's even ever heard of you. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
you have what people want. Which, by the way, they are telling you everything's online now. You can see what people want,
Hmm.
and you just create an experience and show them that you are a real person and you know what you're talking about and you're the kind of person that people would want to engage with. The rest is rock and roll history. So it doesn't matter where you are. If you have, I don't know, a couple hours to plan an event and
Hmm.
then spend a, I don't know, an hour a day inviting people to attend it
Yeah.
and then go run it, yeah, you can go have a 6-figure day too. I just told you the numbers. If you can create a 10K offer
Hmm.
and go do 6 figures in a day, if we can get 50 people there. How many people are online right now, Daniel?
Well, we're doing recording, but and my average audience is 5,100 on Facebook, about 1,100
Well, I just
on
mean
LinkedIn.
overall, how many people are online? Like, there's how many users on Facebook right now,
Oh, yeah,
right?
that's about
You know what I mean?
a billion users on Facebook. There's about 100 million people that go to YouTube a day. I mean,
Yeah. So whether
the
you help
numbers are this.
people with marketing or lead gen, or you help people with sales, you help people with like kind of a life coaching offer, you help people lose weight, you help people in relationships, you
Hmm.
have products that help in all those kinds of areas. It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
There's millions of people online looking for what you can do.
Yeah,
All you have to do is go get 50 of them in the room and you're going to have a big day.
yeah,
That's not hard to do.
that's fantastic. That is fantastic. Fantastic for everybody that's going over and listening. And I would say don't go over and wait and go over and connect with them. I'm going to do that myself. So I'm going to publicly say I'm going to connect with you and go over and do this. I'm going to have to figure out a way, of course. But yeah, because all of us as veterans want to have that transformation. All of us want to go over and we have helping and we want to go over and get out to those people. And you're right, we have that heart, but we have to go over and hit that immersion to have that conversion. And it's that conversion, not just for cash flow for the entrepreneur, but it's that conversion and transformation for that person getting that experience. So as they're getting immersed, they're having that ultimate conversion. And it could be spiritually, mentally, psychologically, or it could be just a whole entire life conversion. So that is huge. So we are running a little bit out of time. So we're gonna go to our last thing because
I
maybe
just I geek out over this stuff. So yeah, you'll have to
no,
rein me in
it's
sometimes.
fantastic. It's fantastic. So as we're talking about your charge forward website, and we'll get to that in a second, but 3 superhero tactics you wish you could have gave yourself to get to that success model, or maybe 3 superhero tactics you would give to your clients. So just go in rapid succession.
Yeah. So I mean, number one is I would have definitely told myself you should be running events. Right. Number one, you should be doing that. Stop trying to grind for these sales calls and and having this complexity. Don't worry about blog this and all these other things. Those are all well and good. Number one, you should create an experience to sell the offer that you want to sell. If I'd go back to myself back in 2017 when I launched my first coaching offer, I would have put everything I had into, hey, all my target audience, I'd love to show you exactly how all this works and invite them into that as opposed to try to get everybody onto calls and try to sell them in the first thing. It was never going to work. That would be number one. Events is what I would tell myself. It's never going to go out of style. I can go all the way back to biblical times. That's how Jesus pushed. That's how he made the movement, was through events, through speaking to them at events. So it's never going to go out of style. The mechanisms may change, but that's the way I would. That's the number one superhero tactic I would have given myself. Number two is to I would have embodied that quote that I gave you, just to understand that you don't need to hit home runs every single time you do something. It's okay to have stepping stones to get where you are. Would have been number three. And then the next superhero tactic, what I said, is like, don't ever for any reason sacrifice time with family for work. That would have been my third one.
And that is absolutely amazing. I think this really ties up the loose ends and everything else to go over and do that. So if you're not connecting with Jay, you need to go to, even if you can't afford his program, at least still go over and follow him, like, share, and those types of things, because charging forward for your community is going to be more important than anything. So we're going to close it out with this. So please go over and tell us what Charge Forward is about. And then if you want to give another quote or close out with that fancy quote about the golf, you can go over and do that. And then we're going to go to credits. So thank you for being on our show and sharing your wisdom. And you get another 2 to 3 minutes to close us out.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, my website's right there. You can see it on my screen, and it's on the little ticker down there. It's www.thechargeforward.com. And what we're all about is we want to help people run their next or maybe even their first online virtual event. We want to help you be able to create a 6 or 7 figure day in your business. And while the revenue is fun, it's really what we want you to do is be serving more of who you can serve. My mission is to help the helpers. At this point, it's my primary way. I want to be able to multiply what I can do. And the best way I know to do that is to help other people be able to multiply their businesses. And so I want to be a part of that. If that's something that you find interesting, you want to learn more about it, head over to that website. We've got some more info, and you can even hop on a call with our team if you want to learn more about the experience. And I promise you, it will be, we could go change some things, whether you're looking to scale or even to launch. It's going to be tons of fun. You can also find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. My name is Justin Boyum. But I go by Jay, but you can find me at Justin Boyum on either one of those. And I'll tell you this one last thing. If I tell a quick story, if that's okay, Daniel, and I'll give my quote for now.
100%.
So there's a story, and I learned this from one of my mentors about a man named W. Clement Stone. And he was a contemporary of Napoleon Hill from the book Think and Grow Rich, which is a phenomenal book. If you haven't read it, go out and read Think and Grow Rich. I should start getting affiliates for all these things. But I digress. W. Clement Stone was like a multimillionaire, like a long time ago, back when like listen, $1 million is a lot of money now. Back then you were a rich dude and he had tons of people working for him that became millionaires as well. And they were asking him about like, how are you successful? How do you make things? And how do you do this? Cause he would live in like these big, sky rises and everything. And he said, well, I have a mantra and I say it to myself like 100 times, like at a time. And I just say it all the time. And it's 3 words. It's do it now. He would just say it to himself. Do it now, do it now, do it now, all the time. And he lived in like those high rises, like he'd be on the elevator. He'd say it like 100 times before you hit the bottom floor. And he told everybody else that worked for him, this is what you're do it now, do it now. Because he learned what most wealthy people understand is that time is infinitely more valuable than money. And that the enemy of creating success and creating wealth was delay. So he would say to himself, do it now, do it now, do it now. So I don't know who's listening to this, what you're trying to do. I'm not trying to say you necessarily need to do what I'm doing, but whatever it is you're trying to do, don't delay. Do it now. Do it now. Go for it now, because time is something you will not get back. We all have a limited number of minutes on this planet. Go do what you're meant to do. Do it now.